Hey everybody, Lindsay Adler here, and I want to take you through my beauty retouching using Evoto. Now, I have actually done this in the past, and you can find it on my YouTube channel, but I wanted to take you through because there's been some great improvements and updates. Now, one of the reasons I use this tool is to save me time, and there are some features that it has that honestly do a much better job than I would do doing this by hand. And of course, it saves me a ton of time. So what I want to do is I want to take you through, and we're going to look at some of the things I would do to improve this image. Now, Ashley is absolutely stunning. She's one of my favorite models, and you can tell straight out of camera, this is an unretouched file. She looks incredible. But there are a couple things I definitely want to go through and improve. So what I like to do is I like to take a look at an image, analyze it, and see where I could maybe get rid of some distractions. I analyze this, and then I go in and I fix specifically those things rather than turning on every slider, which is what makes something look over retouched. So first and foremost, the first thing that catches my attention is probably some of the stray hairs. Next, she is missing a catchlight in the eye on the right. I could improve that. Now there are some subtle texture issues, but they're very, very subtle, and honestly, she's pretty perfect. And I might even out lips a little bit, but it is pretty subtle. So let's start from the very top. Now, if I drag all the way over to the right hand side and remove freckles and acne, when I zoom in, you'll see that it does a couple of things. Sure, it cleans up a little bit of texture here, but one of the things I don't like is that it's actually removed her mole, and that is part of her. So what's nice is that you can actually do what's called manual tuning. In other words, you can kind of mask some things out right in Evoto. So I'm going to make sure that I go ahead and I get rid of where the retouching is on that mole, and I'm going to hit OK. So now it's still smoothing out the skin, getting rid of distractions, but it's kept the things that are true to her. Now, when I do this, I always take a look, and I don't always drag it all the way to the right-hand side, because sometimes when I do that, it will look a little too perfect, but I think in this case, it looks fine. Now, there's also a button for face mole removal. In this case, I do not want the mole removed. Now, I'm looking at the shine on her forehead, and perhaps I'll bring it down just a little bit, and it just tamped it down a tiny bit. Okay, so as I look down here, I'm taking a look. She has subtle texture on her forehead, but honestly, I don't want it to be too smooth, so I'm going to leave that. And basically what I do is I take a glance here, but I don't just drag everything. I only adjust the things that I find actually distracting. So far, so good. Now, she does have a tiny line here. This is technically called a marionette line. However, if we remove it completely, I think that it might look a little flat, so I'm just gonna leave it. I think she's looking pretty great. Okay, next up for skin retouching. So, one of the things that I used to do by hand was localized dodging and burning, as well as frequency separation. And so one of the things that local dodging and burning does is it kind of smooths out transitions. So anywhere where something goes from like light to dark to light, see how it's just kind of uneven here? Well, localized dodging and burning would help me out. And then another tool I could use was frequency separation. Local dodging and burning was just a better, more precise way to do it, whereas frequency separation was perhaps a time-saving method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see about evening with dodging and burning, which is basically my local dodge and burn, like I mentioned, and then sculpting, which this would have been like contouring or global dodging and burning, where I'm brightening highlights and darkening shadows on the face, much like you would apply with your foundation to put highlights on the top of the cheekbones or shadows under the jawline. So let's drag, I'll drag the dodge and burn all the way. And so what you'll notice here is, see where it targeted? It targeted just in that area that I was talking about down here. It definitely affected that. I don't want it to be too smooth, so I'm going to back off just a little bit. Now watch what the sculpting does. It just gives more shape to her face. Now, a makeup artist really will put darker foundation on the sides of the nose, underneath the jawline, around the edge of the hairline. And this is doing that for us. So it gives her a little bit more dimension. Okay, so scrolling down, there is something for retouching body skin. I think she's fine. I don't want it to be too smooth. I don't mind a little bit of texture there. Now there's also some other things here where I could add additional shine on her face. I already think the makeup artist did a good job, so I don't want to go further than that. Now something I will do periodically is if my adjustments that I just made above made the skin look a little over retouched, I'll come in with clarity and just bring it up a little bit. But if you bring it up to 100%, this looks over sharpened. So I would do so sparingly. Okay, so next up, this is something I absolutely love with beauty, and it's some beauty retouching in Evoto, and it's something I used to struggle with, which is unifying the color of the face and the body. I ran into this all the time, where the hand would be a different color than the chest, which would be a different color than the face. And so sometimes dragging the AI Unify body complexion and the Unify body complexion sliders, sometimes it even things out for me. So I want to do that just a little bit, and you can see now the skin on the chest is similar to the face. I can back it off a little bit, kind of meet in the middle here. Looks good so far. Now, another approach I will often take, in fact, it's kind of my favorite thing to do, is if I want the skin to look a little bit more golden. What you can do is select a skin tone. Now, obviously, you do not want to change the color of the person's skin, although you can give them a subtle tan. But instead, one of the reasons I like this is it basically takes that color and puts a wash over all the skin. So I feel like it unifies it just a little bit more. So here's without and here's with. And then, for example, if you like the color but you think it's a little too dark, you can go down to Skin Radiance and it'll just lighten it up a little bit. So you're trying to find your sweet spot there. Now, I really like this, but the color that I usually use 95% of the time is the one that I have selected here. Okay, I'm not going to reshape her face because I think that it looks great, but I will tell you there are tons of options to do so. But one of the things you have to consider is, what is the end purpose of this image? Are we using this for a beauty campaign and this model is our canvas and we can change her face however we want? Is this a portrait where we want to keep it true to the person, but maybe we want to help them look like their best on their best day, right? So you can change quite a bit. For example, you can lower the chin, you can change the jawline, you can taper the face, all of that. You can adjust the hairline. And so, you know, these are all things that you might consider, but I really don't think it's necessary for her. That being said, with a beauty campaign, one of the things that we find beautiful, just in general, is facial symmetry. So when a subject is facing me straight on towards camera, I like to make the face look a little more symmetrical. So if one eye is smaller, I try to make it a little bit more even. If the one lip is lower. And so she really is a stunning woman, and it's pretty close, but I did want to show you this feature called Symmetrize. And what it does is it evens out the features completely. It is going to be up to you whether you think that is necessary. For example, in the original, I think that her eyebrows being uneven is a little bit interesting. So for example, here's the original. The left eyebrow is lifted up. It looks like she's engaging with the camera a little bit. But here I have evened out the nose and lips more, which I think looks nice. So it really depends on the purpose of your photo. Okay, so I think the facial expression looks good. The teeth aren't really showing. Now let's talk about eyes. Her eyes are pretty nice. You really want to be careful not to over brighten. That's a common mistake I see. But one of the things I mentioned is that she does not have even catch lights. So I'm going to select indoor catch lights. And the reason having catch lights be the same is so important is without one, it actually makes you think that her face is uneven and this eye is droopy, even though it may even just been my light or perhaps the eyelashes. So I'm going to select the indoor catch lights, and I am going to pick one that ideally looks pretty close to the one that already exists on the left. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust the position. So I'm basically going to try to line it up. And so I can bring it over. And the reason I'm doing that is it'll make the right-hand side eye make more sense, because what it means is that it's going to match the position to the left. So we're going to go here. I think that's pretty good. And then I'm going to bring the left one down because there was already a catch light there, but I'm going to unlink them so that I can independently adjust their brightness, and I'm going to bring the right up. So let's just see, I'm going to bring the left down quite a bit, maybe something like that. Now this is an instance where I might come in and post perhaps in Photoshop and lighten this up just a little bit brighter. Okay, so let's see. Makeup, this is very, very helpful if you, let's just put it this way, if perhaps you think something's a little bit weak, maybe you need to add more dimensionality, or you want to, maybe the makeup artist didn't apply eyelashes and you wish they did. You know, I of course can go in and enhance that here, but honestly, I think my makeup artist did a wonderful job. So I want you to notice the theme is if I don't think it is distracting, if it doesn't need to be fixed, I don't just automatically do it. So to show you so far, here's what we've got. Okay. All right, but this is the big one for this image. You will notice her hair looks great. I mean, it's so voluminous and shapely. However, there are a lot of crosshairs and there's a lot of rough hairs on the edges. I mean, there's a ton. So what I can do is I can drag the stray hair removal, and I'm going to go 100% to show you what it does. And so in a before and after, it really cleans up that edge immensely. Typically, if you zoom in, what you may see at this point is you may see a little bit of artifacting, especially on clean backgrounds like this. So typically what I do is I still get rid of the stray hairs. I still drag it here. And you can actually see one of the reasons I like it so much is it's cleaning up a lot of the stray hairs or darkening down the stray hairs that are actually within the hairline. So like even over here, it's just kind of cleaning things up a little bit. But what I will usually do is I have Evoto get me this 90% of the way. And then if I go into Photoshop later on, maybe I'll select the edge just a little bit, and then I will do a generative fill. And what happens is it'll usually clean up the edge for me and bring back some of the hair texture. So I might even just smooth or paint over this particular area, and then I will select the hair edge and have it generate. Now I do want to test something. One of the things I noticed in this image is that the background was uneven. So I can go over to the background panel here, and there is the ability to unify the lighting. And so when I unified the lighting, kind of centered everything, it kind of made it a little bit more even. So that is something, since we were talking about the background and the edges, you may want to do. So that hair retouching, night and day better than what I would have done for sure. But I still need to clean up the edges a little bit. Now, if you do not like what it's doing to the edges, notice that with stray hair removal, you can also back it off a little bit off of the edges. So you can kind of leave it a little bit messier and leave it a little bit more organic, and then just have it clean up within the figure outlines. But this is one of the, it's not a brand new feature, but it's one of the newer features since I have done this demonstration, is you have the ability to smooth hair. I am going to drag it to 100% just to show you what it can do, and then we're going to back it off. So this hair just looks painted on. Now, I think that this is too much, but it is looking gorgeous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to back it off. And the idea is I want it to look like I want it to look more blended and a little shinier, but I don't want it to look like it was drawn on literally by a painter. So that's kind of, this is the original. And so I'm thinking like something here where it just kind of smooths everything just a little bit. And what I may do later on as well is sometimes when I smooth the hair, I will also go in and sharpen it after the fact. So I still get the more even continuity of the tones in the hair, so it like looks a little bit more smooth, but I'll still get that texture. Now, speaking of smoothness and shine, there's also a hair shine enhancement. And so this is what I used to do by hand. I used to go in and I would use a global dodge and burn, and I would come in and I'd paint lighter on the highlights, darker on the shadows, and what it does is it makes the hair look more dimensional. So look at what it's done in this image. It is pretty profound. Okay, everybody, so I wanted to bring this into Photoshop just to show you a couple of the changes that I would make and where Evoto might come in to save the day again. So I saw that I thought the chest was just a little bit too bright, and honestly, maybe even the highlight on the forehead. These are the sorts of things that I still am doing in either my raw processor, or I'm bringing into Photoshop a little bit more of my fine adjustments, although Evoto is continually growing and improving in that area. So far, just tamp down that highlight, and I've darkened down the chest a little bit. And then what I did is I actually started coming in and just selecting pieces of the edges of the hair and writing hair edge. So I got a hair edge there, and there, and there, and there, and there. And so you can see that I no longer have issues with any artifacting on the edge. The edge of the hair is even smoother, but you'll notice that I have that weird problem that Photoshop gives you where it gets darker on the edge sometimes when it generates, and then the background looks all uneven. So guess what I would do? I'd bring it back into Evoto. Okay, so this is what we achieved in Evoto. This is what I took over and did in Photoshop, but man, that background's looking rough. So we're going to go over to the background panel. We're going to smooth out if there's any distractions. We're going to clean up the background. Okay, looking good. I'm going to remove colored banding. That's looking good. That's going to make a big difference there. So watch so far. Do you see how everything's getting more even? And then I also want to unify the lighting, which is going to help make that all even. So I basically kind of just said, clean up this background for me. And you'll notice that those problems that I had over here, they go away. And if you think the background gets too dark, you want it to be more luminous, you can drag that as well and make it just a bit glowier. So I can kind of work with these two together to help me achieve the edges that I want. Now everybody, I did this very, very quickly. And in the past, if I did a beauty retouch like this, realistically, it'd probably take me, I'm not even kidding, like way over an hour. But I went very quickly here. What that means is I did gloss over some things that I would probably give a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb to, but the idea is that these tools can get me 90%, and then I can spend my time on that last 10% to get it perfect. All right, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed those quick tips for how I would use Evoto and some of the new tools in my beauty retouching. And here's the thing. It's not about the tools, it's about knowing when to stop, because Evoto can save you so much time, but if you just drag everything to 100%, it's not going to look right. So you got to play around with it, and always go in knowing your intention. So is this meant to be a perfectly polished beauty image, or is it meant to be a portrait where you need to stay true to the person, or are you just trying to enhance the person subtly? So always keep that in mind with whatever you're doing in post, whether it's traditional tools or new tools that save you time. Thanks everybody, and be sure to check out the description for a discount for using Evoto. See you next time.